Is this thing on? Welcome back to Movies TV Man. Of course, you can follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Man, and welcome to Friday's edition of the DCEU Daily. I've been doing these videos since 2018. That's when I set up this channel, Movies TV Man, which was originally called Big Mouth. My motivation for doing a YouTube channel was to talk about my passion of movies and DC live action. But my other motivation was to talk about the Snyder Cut and fight for that movie and fight for the integrity of DC live action. So as I say, today we're talking about the Snyderverse, everything Snyderverse. We have got this huge event happening all over social media later on, and we want it to trend high. Why are we doing this trend today? Because Zaslav and Discovery are coming, and we want them to hear us. So first and foremost, this is our introduction to Warner Discovery. This is how they're going to meet us through this event, right? We do not want them to see us being toxic and negative, because that's what they've been told we are by people like Toby Emmerich and Ann Sarnoff. So we don't talk about Toby while we're doing Restore the Snyderverse. We don't talk about other DC films and trying to put them down. We talk about our love for the Snyderverse as we hashtag Restore the Snyderverse. Make sure you hashtag the one without the goat on it. Very, very important. Now here in Cyprus, I think we start at 4:14. In the UK, it's 2:14 for obvious reasons. So there's a lot of history. There's a lot of stuff that's happened and gone down. But ultimately here, I'm a fan of Snyder's work, especially in the DC universe. But I'm also an all-round DC fan. So I was really doing Snyder videos all the time. But then I got sidetracked by this multiverse strategy. And I thought to myself, this is a good idea. This starts things again, but doesn't forget anything. And as a DC fan, I thought, yeah, this sounds good. So I got sidetracked away from everything Snyderverse and thought, yeah, I got really excited as a geek and a nerd. Although I was wrong to do so, because it took me sometimes against what I was fighting for in the very beginning. I spoke against Ray Fisher, who did and said a lot of right and good and proper things, but I disagreed with his stance against Walter Hamada, because Walter Hamada was going to give me the multiverse strategy. So things got a bit twisted for me. But it's only since last week, when they delayed these DCEU movies and brought Shazam forward and delayed the Flash movie for 7 months, that I came to my senses. And I realized that you should never trust Toby Emmerich or Warner Brothers Pictures. So I had to learn the hard way. How did we get here that we're needing to do this trend again? Well, you see, I take myself back to the beginning of March, and hearing some reviews in the minority of the Batman, but they were there. It takes itself too seriously. He never smiles. It's too dark. It's too long. And it reminded me of the reactions from the majority of critics to Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice. And I was becoming frustrated all over again. What kind of review is, it's too dark? It takes itself too seriously. Some stories are supposed to take themselves too seriously. Can you take a story too seriously? Matt Reeves is a Batman stan. What do you expect him to do? Have Robert Pattinson dancing and joking for the whole fucking movie, right? No. Pathetic. But of course, this opinion of the Batman, as I say, was in its minority. And there are reasons for this, because Matt's film is in its own universe. So this is not for the mainstream audience, even though the mainstream audience are gobbling it up. It's crossed over 500 million in the global box office now. The China COVID stuff will not hurt it that much, let's be clear about that. But something else happened during the build-up and marketing to this film. Matt Reeves, the co-writer and director of this film, made sure that everybody knew what this film was going to be and not going to be. So when we saw the trailers, there was no hiding what this film was going to be. Now with BVS, the studio were trying to hide what this movie was going to be, because ultimately they were scared of it, and they didn't allow Snyder to come out and do what Matt was doing and say, listen, this is what my movie is. If you don't like it, don't watch it. Which in a way is exactly what Matt did. So when Batman vs Superman was released, all hell broke loose. And people like me and a lot of you out there who loved it went through a really, really horrible time. I mean, I think it brought everyone's anxiety up. And we were really quiet back then, wasn't we? We weren't the dynamic, vocal force that we are today. And I think this is where some of the aggression comes from. When people are called certain names, when people go too far, and they go against the central universe that Hamad is trying to build right now, it comes from frustration. We had to take a lot of shit. We then had to see a film called Civil War, and exactly the same film as BVS. And for that film to get credit, apparently that wasn't too dark. It wasn't too long. It didn't take itself too seriously. So the irony isn't lost on me. The studio didn't just wake up one morning and say, right, Zach, we can't do this, creative differences. No. They reacted from the critics and the mainstream audience. Of course, you shouldn't listen to people who think DC movies should be exactly the same as the MCU, because the MCU makes money, right? And that's all that matters. Of course, studios are businesses and they want to make money. How much money do you think Cronenberg's Dead Ringers made? Or Jodie Foster in Silence of the Lambs? Or Jodie Foster in The Accused? I can go on. Kevin Costner's Dances with Wolves, a movie with a very important, Native American message there. Amazing film, winner of multiple Oscars. If we lived today, these films just wouldn't happen, because the mentality is different. All you get when an MCU project is revealed, it's the best thing ever. Wow, wow. Even if they hate the thing, it's the best thing ever. How can any other movie survive? They even block off indie movies going to the cinemas by extending the screens MCU movies are at. This is how bad we are now. This is how far it's become. Was it Blu-ray Angel who asked someone who worked in a cinema what he thought of the Batman, and he said, it's May, it's too long, there's too much talking. This is what Feige and the MCU have done to audiences. Apparently dialogue and long scenes with conversations are made and boring. Apparently that's bad pacing. So this is where we've become now, and this is what BVS did. It had lots of dialogue. There was beautiful action in that movie, of course there was. But there was long spurts in that movie where there was no action. And that's no problem, but it is to the mainstream MCU addicted audience. Because the MCU, as Martin Scorsese say, is an amusement park. That's what it is. It doesn't try and tell a deep story. It just wants to garnish a movie, right? I don't hate the MCU. I hate that it dominates theatre, it dominates cinema, and dominates our industry. And that's very damaging to our industry. So BVS really is the main reason why we're here today and fighting, because they allowed Snyder to keep on making his Justice League movie. And ultimately, he kept on pitching scripts to them and they didn't like them because apparently they were too dark. Listen, the studio were understandably scared from critics and the mainstream audience's reaction. But you brought the man in. And I mean, if we go back to the beginning, Christopher Nolan was like this godfather of the DCEU at the beginning. And he was there protecting Snyder, not letting WB executives come in and, interfere with what Zack was doing. But something happened to destabilize the DCEU from the very beginning. WB did not like the full global box office of Man of Steel, which was about 650 million. They believed the movie, the Superman movie, should make more, and I agree. But that's neither here nor there. They blamed Nolan and Goya for that. They left, but they said to Zack, carry on, Zack, let's see what you've got to offer now. So they didn't blame Snyder at that point. So with BVS, they saw the rushes and they were scared. So they kind of thought, well, we've gone this far now, right? You know, let's hide what this movie is and let's sell it as a popcorn chomping movie. And let's ask the audience who will win. Do you remember all that? And this is where we were. That's not what the movie was. It wasn't who will win. This was a deep dive in putting Superman and Batman in the real world, in a kind of 9/11 reality. Because that's what the Battle of Metropolis is. It's 9/11, but with an alien invasion. So Goya wrote a smart script with a smart concept. But unfortunately, the mainstream audience are not very smart. And I'm not saying you have to be intelligent to understand Man of Steel or Batman versus Superman, but you need a more deeper, thicker movie palette. And unfortunately, the MCU has taken that away. Now, The Dark Knight was appreciated. Nolan's trilogy was appreciated. But then the MCU came after that, and people's palettes had changed. So you get this a lot now. It's too dark. It's interesting hearing reactions about Moon Knight, a much darker take on the MCU, which has no connection, blatantly, to the other movies. Of course, it's still part of that universe. Are those people going to say that Moon Knight is too long, too dark, takes itself too seriously? Of course not. It's the MCU. The MCU can do whatever they want. And it's perfectly fine. Do you see the hypocrisy here? But I'm done with smashing my head on a brick wall. I've made my mistakes as a fan myself. I've just literally confessed earlier on that I was seduced by the multiverse strategy. And I was kind of, okay, we've seen the Snyder Cut now. Let's go to this direction. Because as a, an all-round DC fan, even though I'm a Snyder fan as well, I was like, okay, we've seen that now. Wow, what a movie. But, this is, let's see what they do with this. But then, when they delayed the Flash movie, I was reminded that you can't trust these people. We are really in a very interesting time with Zaslav and Discovery coming. Nobody really knows what Zaslav's doing, but we do know that Zaslav has been living in California, Hollywood, California, for the past year or so, since this merger was announced. He's been talking to creatives. So that's what I'm saying to you. We don't need to be negative with this trend, because it will be a trend. It would be amazing if we could reach 2 million, because we've never done that before, I don't think. Maybe I'm wrong, but let's reach a huge target here, because it's important. But this, it's like if you have a girlfriend and she's invited you to meet her parents. You want to make the best first impression, right? So what happens here is you put on your shirt like this. You may not like this shirt, it's just an example. And you speak properly, you don't swear like you would do with your friends. You want to make a good impression. And this is what we've got to do today. We've got to look like the positive, loving fans that we are. We love the Snyderverse. That's it. We want Zack to complete his 2 Justice League movies. And if possible, and if Ben wants it, we want to see that Batfleck movie made. Because it sounds amazing. We just want pure things. But it's important we do them in a pure way. Because a lot of us have crossed too many lines. We must remember that Warner Discovery, whose attention we're trying to get today, isn't the problem. They didn't create this problem. Now, I don't know what changes they're going to make when they go in, if any. Now, if you're a fan of WB, if you're a fan of DC, what you need them to do is just absolutely gut Warner Brothers Pictures and create a Warner Discovery Studios or Pictures and a DC Studios. That's what sensible, ambitious people would do. Because David Zaslav doesn't need reminding that DC is WB's bread and butter. But he's also planning on going back to the old Warner Brothers, where we have different movies. It's not just about comic book movies, because I appreciate all media. And I don't just want to see a world full of DC or Marvel movies. I want to see everyone. I want people, every kind of, all walks of life going to the cinema. Because it's become very frustrating for a lot of people. And this is why Martin Scorsese, isn't happy. Someone said the other day, was it Samuel L. Jackson, someone like that? Oh, Martin Scorsese doesn't like it because nobody goes to see his movies. Well, you're actually wrong. People do go and see his movies. Now, maybe he doesn't make $2 billion a picture, but it's not about that for someone like Martin Scorsese. you're stopping other artists from taking the other screens and creatives. And that's wrong. There's got to be a place for superhero media and other movies. And this is the ambition that David Zaslav and Discovery have got for Warner Brothers Discovery. So it's very exciting. So this is why we're here. Because then we go from BVS to Justice League. This is where there was an uncomfortable relationship between Snyder and the studio, Jeff Johns, and I think Joss Whedon was even there as a consultant, because I think that's what Zack said. And Zack took it on the chin and said, well, maybe he can help us. He wasn't there to help. It was a bit like Richard Lester, who came in the middle of shooting Superman the movie. He was there to take over from Dick Donner, not to help. And that's what happened. And ultimately, history repeated itself again. Zack's daughter took her own life. But that's not why he left the picture, like some tell you. He left the picture because they put so much pressure on him, and because of the death of his daughter, he didn't have to fight them any longer, because he was fighting them successfully. And I think he would have got his picture out there if that tragic incident didn't happen. But ultimately, he couldn't do it anymore. So he had to walk away. You know, Deb and Zack had no choice, because nothing's more important than your own family and your own children. And your child taking her own life, I don't think there's anything worse that can happen to people than that. You shouldn't outlive your children, right? Absolutely horrible. But that studio decided to take advantage of that tragedy and say that Zack left because of that incident. It's not as simple as that, and I've just explained to you what happened, because that's how Zack explains it now as well. So you get to a situation where they tell you that Zack can't finish the movie because of the death of his daughter. His good friend Joss Whedon's taking over. And he's just going to finish off the movie. Bit of post, nothing else. All of a sudden, we're getting reshoots and the movie's under 2 hours. So I go and watch the Justice League and I come out. I'm sitting in the cab and I lie to the cab driver that I liked it, and I'm thinking to myself, what the fuck was that? And at that time, I didn't know, is this actually Zack's movie? That's the first thing I needed to know. Even though Zack couldn't speak because they silenced him, he was sending out smoke signals. And somehow we found out the truth, that that wasn't Zack's movie. You see, there's one thing I knew even after I saw Justice League. I knew that Zack had finished principal photography in London. So I know he shot everything that he wanted to shoot, apart from that Joker sequence, which he decided to add when the Snyder Cut was greenlit. So when people were saying there's no Snyder Cut, I knew that wasn't true, but I also knew, and because a lot of propaganda merchants were trying to throw out the fact that the movie wasn't finished. No, the movie wasn't finished until Zack was given the 70 million to finish it, right? It wasn't finished, but it was all filmed. It was all there. All he had to do is put it together, VFX, and show it to the world. This guy was smart. He was filming alternate takes of the movie he wanted, as well as shooting the movie Warner Brothers wanted. So this guy knew what was coming. And ultimately, the world saw Justice League and realised what a piece of shit it was. Whose fault is this? Who's to blame for all of this? Jeff Johns, Toby Emmerich? Ultimately, I blame the audiences, the critics, and the studio's reaction to those audiences and critics. It's okay not to like a film that I like. That's not the issue here. It's how you dislike something that really matters. I think the way I dislike Wonder Woman 84 or Birds of Prey is constructive. And I still say they're okay movies on a Saturday afternoon to watch. They're still solid. And there's the difference, isn't it? How you hate something. But you see, Snyder was hated by the mainstream audience before he even made Man of Steel. So it was always going to be an uphill struggle. But then we went and fought for the Snyder Cut, and it seemed like an impossible battle. And then when Ben Fricks in the Wall Street Journal posted that hit piece, we thought it was an even more impossible battle. I was considering giving up then, but we knew they were lying. That had been done out of fear, because we were hitting the high notes. And we realised that, and that's why we continued. And we were sending, signs on planes and placards and flowers to the new AT&T receptionist at the studio because we're trying to wow them. The new ownership of Warner, AT&T, and it worked. John Stankey saw that and saw the potential, which is sensational, really, if you think about it. And he gave Zach 70 million out of his own pocket. But then things got a bit nasty between Warner Brothers Pictures, Zach and Ray Fisher. I think if that never happened, I think we would have been in a situation where maybe Zach could have got Justice League 2 and 3 on HBO Max. We'll never know now. Of course, I think there's a huger possibility here that Zach's Justice League 2 and Justice League 3 could actually be released in theatres. Look, the world is our oyster. But I also don't want to set you up for false hope. The reality is Zaslav and Discovery may just keep Toby Emmerich. Zaslav and Discovery may not change anything. But I personally don't think that's the case. But you never know. I don't know for sure. I believe big changes are coming. We know one thing that's going to change. The name of HBO Max is going to merge with Discovery Plus. These are all good signs of their ambition. Zack Snyder's Snyder Cut, Zack Snyder's Justice League Snyder Cut was a huge success. It made a lot of money. It brought HBO Max huge subscribers. The physical copies were impossible to buy. I should know. I was on the waiting list for a very long time. An amazing Justice League movie. And I don't know anyone out there today, director-wise, who's going to be able to outdo what Zack Snyder did. What a sensational movie. So today, everyone, use your brains, use your intellect, and let's restore the Snyderverse. This has been Movies TV Man. I'm Nick, your host with the most. Just ask your girlfriends and your wives. Like, share, comment, subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you never miss this perfection. And I'll see you again later on for more Movies TV Man. This has been the DCEU Daily. I'm Mick, your host with the most. Until we see each other again, goodbye. Au revoir. Auf Wiedersehen.